Hi, everybody, and welcome to a new edition of Newsmakers. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, July 25th, and I am joined by my two loyal and close friend colleagues, Nick Welsh of the Santa Barbara Independent and Josh Molina, man of many hats, particularly Santa Barbara Talks podcast. Hey, a lot to talk about on State Street and downtown and city stuff, which we'll get to in a second. But Nick, I have to congratulate you on writing a piece about my pet peeve, which is all of the rockets being launched over our heads and shaking our windows by the repulsive Elon Musk, and how the military is apparently covering for him against the Coastal Commission.
Really good point, but I just would like to say the fact that you are not enchanted by the light that those giant sperm cast upon the night sky shows that you have no romance in your soul. And
Yeah, you got carried away with you got a little carried away with that sperm metaphor, I gotta say, but go ahead.
You know what? It's not a metaphor. If you look at it, it's like a lone wolf sperm looking for an egg to collide with. But you don't even have to read anything into it. But the deal is this, is that up at Lompok's Vandenberg Space Force Base, can't call it an Air Force base anymore, it's a Space Force base, Elon Musk and his company SpaceX are blasting off a bunch of rockets. They've started off doing 6 a year. Now they want to increase it to 36 a year. And really what they want to get it to by 2026 is something like 90 to 120 a year, which is a lot. And right now it's really, the blasts are in the eye of the beholder. Some people think they're beautiful and wonderful and exciting. Other people think they're a nuisance. They mess up, the pets. But there are some serious environmental questions about what the impacts are. And it sort of calls to mind our good buddy Donald Rumsfeld, unindicted war criminal who worked in the administration of George Bush during the Iraq War. And there are known unknowns and unknown unknowns. And I think up at Vandenberg, there are both of them in terms of the impact. But there's a lot of really big questions. And one of the big questions that the Coastal Commission is asking is, right now, Vandenberg is saying, you guys, the Coastal Commission, don't get to say boo about this because we are the federal government and we are exempt from any of your interference. You have no jurisdiction over what we want to do. And the fact that we are going to ask you your opinion is just to show how polite and magnanimous we are, but we don't have to do anything. And legally, I think it's a pretty strong point. Coastal Commission staff and a lot of the commissioners, except for your friend Megan Harmon, who has to recuse herself because her father, who lives up in Lompoc, has an indirect economic tie to a company that does business up there.
Really?
So she is actually going to be participating. But the question is, only a tiny fraction of the launches that Elon Musk is sending into outer space to disseminate, not to use the metaphor too much, his seed of satellites into polar orbit for cell phone usage. Only a tiny percent of those satellites are for military application.
Like 15% or something,
15%. Right? The colonel is saying, no, it's as high as 33%, but it's really 15% right now. And so the Coastal Commission is saying, that's not enough for you to give them the big umbrella of immunity. And I think the colonels, if they were to beat this horse to death of my metaphor, they would say, well, there's no such thing as being a little bit pregnant. You have
quite a lot of heteronormative statements with the intentionality of the sperm, Nick.
Well, where the sperm goes is, there is no egg into this equation. that is you reading into it. So
Oh, no, what about the moon? Anyway, all right, listen, when is this here? There's a hearing.
there's
right?
a hearing on August 7th, I believe, or is it the 8th, down
Oh, I
in the
think you said
beautiful
the
city
7th.
of Calabasas, where, I mean, this thing has been punted and kicked down the road for about a year now. And I think they're probably going to get to it. The environmental community is up in arms, and the subliminal text here is that the county of Santa Barbara and San Luis Obispo are all screaming in their jeans about the money to be made. Sorry, I couldn't resist. I haven't quite grown up yet.
And Jerry's
The space
Views
port.
expressed on this show are not necessarily those of the producers. Go ahead.
There's a huge interest in the financial juggernaut that the spaceport up there can provide. There's this group called REACH, which is a consortium of public and private interests. I believe they are estimating at this point that if the bump in new rocket cadence, as they call it, is allowed to proceed, that would be $2 billion a year in additional business revenues that are generated, and 2,000 more people employed than currently are. So those are real dollars if they're not imaginary.
All right. Well, everybody should go read Nick's story about this in the Just Out Independent out today. It's really interesting stuff, and there's just been so much gee whiz coverage of this, and nobody's really dug into what is actually happening. And it's pretty astonishing. And so hopefully the Coastal Commission will be able to get in there somehow and do something. But anyway, this hearing's coming up. Read Nick's story. It's a really good and very important issue. All right. A little closer to home, Josh, the All Rise State Street Advisory Committee more or less melted down in its most recent meeting. I think they've been watching the show or something, and they all realize they've been at this for something like 50 or 60 years, and they're kind of nowhere. Where do things stand now?
Well, at this meeting, you speak of Roger Durling sort of stole the show because he's normally pretty quiet. He's not the most outspoken guy, and he's on the committee, and he basically just like trashed the staff and the process and said, we've taken so long and we've never been able to talk. And here we are about to make final recommendations, and we've never had a chance to speak. And that was sort of captured the whole tenor of the meeting. Most people sort of felt frustrated that after all these years, 3 years, there was no agreement or consensus on what to do with State Street. Even Dave Davis, the chair of the committee,
Yeah.
who is very revered in planning circles, he expressed some grief and remorse that he was not able to play out Hal Conklin's vision for what State Street should be. So where are they at? They took about 100 straw poll votes on each block and what they would like to see. They even got into yes ifs, meaning trying to split whether people supported it or not with variables, and it was kind of a big mess. So it's going to go to the council eventually with all of these recommendations block by block. The general consensus is that we want about 3 blocks with no cars. And then there's a whole bunch of dispute about whether there should be cars, 1 lane, 2 lanes, up the street past Carrillo. And it's messy and no one's agreeing with each other. And staff, I mean, the committee is too big for one. And that room, okay, that room is full of so many egos. There's so many egotistical adults in that room who are wanting to tell the world what it should be like. And when you have that many clash and collision of ideas, it's a very frustrating situation. Meanwhile, the mayor wants to just open it up in the meantime and figure it out once the master plan is done. We're at least a year away.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things interesting in your story, which everybody should go back and read, was sort of the byplay between Megan Harmon and Kristen Snedden, and also Roger and Kristen or Megan, where Megan said we got to deal with these details, and the big picture will emerge from that, and others wanted to see the big picture first and then lower down. But of course, the big unanswered question is who's going to pay for any of this. And the Kelly McAdoo, the new city admin, how long can we call her the new one? Is that 6 months?
3 months. I think she's been here 3 months now, and
So
I
she's
think
not
that's
new.
still new.
Okay. Anyway, she convened people who actually own property and run businesses down there, and that seemed to be a big question that was on their minds because the drainage stuff alone or the stormwater is what, $10 million a block or something?
Well, that I managed to make that meeting, and they did not have enough coffee. Let's put it that way for 8:30 in the morning. And
Was it the subject matter or?
no, it was actually a really interesting meeting, and the fact that it took 3 years for this meeting to take place, given that these people, the business owners and the property owners, will be critical to the execution and success of whatever grand plans are hatched. The fact that they were not brought in for what do you think until 3 years down the road is kind of mind-boggling. I will say, even weirder, none of the State Street Advisory Committee members were allowed to attend this meeting. They were told, you are not allowed to be
Because
here
of the Brown Act, because they didn't notice the meeting, right?
because they hadn't noticed the meeting, right? So there was no interplay or infusion taking place there. So it was a great gesture by the new city administrator, Kelly McAdoo, to acknowledge the obvious. And I think she told Eli Isaacson, the head of community development, dude, we got to start the conversation. Well, there was a number of, what was really interesting about it, the $10 million figure was a block was thrown out by Laura Knight, who runs Pascucci's. And afterwards, I asked Kelly McAdoo about the numbers. She said, we don't know where that came from. We don't know if it's right. We have to figure out in one of our subsequent reports what all this will cost, at least a useful ballpark. But one of the big, hairy deals that everybody has to deal with is what do you do with the storm drain runoff that goes down the street between now and whenever. And Kelly was saying there may be some flexibility that the city has in terms of how that's implemented, and it won't be, this is how it has to be. So they have to look into that. But it's a big number. Whatever.
So Josh, tie a bow on this. So where is this all headed?
Well, it's going to go to the city council, and they're going to take a
When?
vote
Do we know when?
soon. I believe it's coming up in August, and eventually they're gonna offer their direction, and then they're gonna draft a plan, and then next year they're gonna release it. I think it's sort of like a year-long sort of process that we still have ahead before it finally goes through all the committees again, and then comes back to the council for a big final.
So is the advisory committee's work done here?
They're going to meet again. It's pretty much done, the bulk of it, but they are going to see it again after they meet with council, after it meets with some of the other groups, advisory groups. They will get another shot at it, and then eventually the council will vote on this whole thing. But there's another plan in play before that, which is to just open it up while this is going on, and we'll see if that plays out.
So will there be costs included in what's presented to council, or is that going to come later?
A couple of the committee members, or I heard this from one of them, it might have been Ed Lenvik. Yeah, Ed Lenvik on the commission said that there's going to be some sort of bond measure to pay for this, that there's no other way to pay for this because it's going to be so expensive. They haven't tackled the specifics of how much it would cost to make it flat and flexible, which ties into the storm drainage issue, is a ton of money, and there is no way to pay for that. And there's so much taxing and assessing and fees going on right now that, I mean, it's
Sales
a
tax.
disaster.
One thing
Sales
Dave
tax
Davis
going
will
down.
say, you know, he was really kind of the paterfamilias of this whole thing. Is that, you know, it took State Street 30 years of planning and rearranging the furniture to get where it is now. And things do not move instantaneously, and people need to sort of calibrate their expectations more realistically. But the other thing he would also admit, and a lot of people, I mean, everywhere is, okay, this is all down the road, big picture, big future, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but what about right now? And so they have to come up with a 6 to 12 months, you know, low hanging fruit. This is what we can do. I mean, one thing Kelly McAdoo said, she was, look, I mean, everybody's been saying, I don't know why it hadn't been done already, but the streets should be cleaner. They should be, you know, streets and sidewalks should be cleaner.
That's what Randy ran for mayor on. That was.
I mean, it's like you would think this was rocket science. So that's one. I mean, bringing out the arts and integrating them into the, you know, what's there now, and there are things that can be done. I think it's the farmers market, when it moves to State Street, has the capacity to help energize it. Certainly on Saturday, we had a op-ed written in our paper from Paul Rellis, former head of Community Environmental Council. There's a plan to try to get sort of a permanent home for the farmers market in one of the vacant banks over by State and Carrillo, where you could have produce and seafood and wine or whatever for sale all the time, not just on Saturday. And again, this is sort of very much in the preliminary stage, but if something like that were to get off the ground, that would be that would have a rejuvenating effect on that corner. I would say that.
All right, and as we debate curb cuts on the 400 block of State Street or whatever, nobody knows how you're gonna pay for it, and, you know, what about the housing, which is another, I mean, that's gonna just shape everything, so, anyway, all right, well.
But the housing is sort of the magic wand that's going to bring life.
Or not.
Or not, yeah.
Nick, I want you to note that we went through an entire discussion of State Street and I did not mention electric bikes. So I think I should get some grace for that.
I think you get some big grace for that.
Hey, Josh, meanwhile, the Chamber of Commerce has sort of quietly put together this little deal, or it's about to be a deal with the city for an economic development plan, for them to do the economic development plan, which I frankly think is part of your one of your boss's plans to control the world. You know, I just found out he's the president of the Santa Barbara Club now. Anyway, so talk about the economic development plan scandal here that's that suddenly emerged that you scooped on.
This was the most unbelievable thing I have seen in a while. This is the finance committee. Kristen Miller, the CEO and president of the Chamber of Commerce, she went from being president of the Goleta one. She navigated this incredible merger between CARP and Santa Barbara. She's growing membership, and the chamber's become this little empire. They're trying to do employee-sponsored housing. They are growing big time. Somehow, she convinces Callie McAdoo and Keith DeMartini, the finance director, to just basically, hey, we'll do economic development proposal for you for you know, $1 million through 2027, and then $500,000 annually. And it's stunning because it just kind of pops up during this finance committee meeting. The things she presented, Megan Harmon did this very tactical breakdown of every one of her points and basically said, you know, I think this is a great idea, but everything you presented here is not new, and it's something our city can do. And what specifically are you going to do with all this money that's
I mean, it
different
it
from
sounded
what
largely
we've done in the past?
like data collection is what it sounded like. Mostly they were talking about doing.
You know, Kristen Miller had a very nice PowerPoint, but it was all of that language that we're so used to hearing.
You mean experiential micromobility?
Yeah, there's 8 districts. She said some of the data is going to be they're going to count up the number of meetings with the business community and send that to the city. They're also going to have hotel tax, sales tax data. And Megan Harmon said, well, we already have a finance department that does that. She cited this um, something to love in Santa Barbara or so much to love in Santa Barbara branding campaign, which is already started. And Megan Harmon says, well, we have a public relations person. This is a lot of money. And so the thing is,
So
there
this
is
is
no request.
replacing the gone but not forgotten Jason Harris. Was that his name?
Jason Harris. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Kelly McAdoo is new. Keith DeMartini's relatively new. And I think it's very natural for them to have this idea of we're going to be the ones who can figure it out, even though so many smart people before them did not figure it out. So they're thinking, oh, let's just partner with the chamber. The chamber's not the unifying voice of the business community in this town. In fact, our business community is fractured.
Yeah,
And so,
you're
go ahead.
very right.
Good.
I mean, them and the downtown organization have not really danced that smoothly together.
Oh,
There is a problem with data. The city does not have data. Like, if you're going to find out what buildings are vacant on State Street, how long they've been vacant, who owns them, you try to like figure out, get your arms on why certain landlords feel comfortable, economically comfortable letting their buildings remain vacant. They have no data to like say what the problem spots are. So there are certain types of questions, or what kind of rents are being charged. I don't know if the chamber is going to get into that, but there are some big black holes when it comes to economic information that would be useful, because otherwise we just are grabbing at our hair and hoping that we pull some out.
yeah. Well, on behalf of the taxpayers, the stakeholder who was never at the table, I would just say this is going to come across. Oh, here's another $500,000 for consulting, which is basic. I mean, are they talking about doing an economic development strategy, which the late Hal Conklin was always trying to get people to do?
Yeah, they want $500,000 every year to basically provide the city with data and brand and market these districts. And they want a statue, something that says Santa Barbara in it, and that people can go take photos and then put it on social media. And so Santa Barbara would have that natural branding that they say other cities are doing. Here's the thing that is popped into my head. We have this sales tax, half-cent sales tax increase on the November ballot. Typically, businesses, the chamber, they oppose these kinds of things. They're typically conservatives, and they're like, why are we going to tax people more? They're going to shop less. The chamber is not opposing this. And guess what? They plan to, how is this going to be funded? Through the sales tax. So it's very weird, very odd. They should be doing
suggesting this is a payoff?
I'm not saying it's a payoff, but I know in any other universe, the Chamber of Commerce opposes a sales tax increase, but not in this case. And also, I mean, it's this situation where there was no request for proposals. They just said, Chamber, you can do it. And we've been down this road. We have that Cosmot report. We already have so much info.
Is it going to the whole council? Is it going to be is the council going to vote on it?
It's going to go to the council, I think August 20th, and then they'll hash it out. I'm sure they'll approve it, but I think people are. I mean, who knows what will happen between now and then, but Eric, Megan, and Alejandro Gutierrez, the finance committee members, they all raised these concerns and then said, we're going to send it to the council. So,
well, let me ask, didn't they just approve a community business improvement district for downtown?
Yeah.
And wasn't that supposed to help market downtown and keep downtown clean and create a big bustling? it just seemed like it's chocolate syrup on top of chocolate ice cream with chocolate Jimmy's
Yeah,
on it.
there's so many moving parts going on here. It's just astonishing. It's this Rube Goldberg kind of thing between the advisory committee and the economic development plan and the chamber and the. All right. Well, we'll get it all figured out because coming up are city council elections, and while it once looked as if it'd be a very boring election season, now it appears there's like a race in all three districts that are on the ballot, huh, Josh?
Yeah, so Tony Becerra on the west side, he's a little bit of a legend. I know, can you be a little bit of a legend? He's probably a lot of a legend.
He's
He
a
owns
big
a
legend.
martial arts
He's a big
dojo.
legend, would you say?
He's
Yeah.
a house, I mean, he's a household name on the west side, and families have gone through his program, adults. He's very well liked and respected, and he's running for city council again against Oscar Gutierrez. So I think it's going to be a close race. It's going to be competitive. I think that the commercial real estate people are probably going to be behind Tony because this rent control thing has become the dominant theme through
Yeah,
the
yeah.
election. I talked to Tony. He did not come across to me as a anti-rent control, as a pro property owner. He's a renter himself. So I think there's some stuff happening that may not be
But he's
based in
getting
truth.
money from the real estate.
Well, he's not getting any money now. He's just getting signatures. But he struck me as a very pragmatic guy who said, you know, I was evicted. I don't want rents to go up. So I don't know where he's going to stand on that issue. But
And then
I
what's
do
going
know
on? What's
I
going
do
on?
know he's a very nice guy, and I imagine a lot of West Side people are going to vote for him. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I don't think it's going to be easy for Oscar.
Two nice guys on the
Yeah.
west. But what's going on in the Mesa now? Mike Jordan has an opponent in District
Yeah.
2.
Do you know her name, Nick? I don't know her name. Someone pulled papers. It's Taylor is the last name, I believe. Mike
Yeah.
Jordan has an opponent. But here's the thing. Mike Jordan went for the endorsement of the Democratic Central Committee and didn't get it. In fact, they didn't even vote to consider him for an endorsement.
Is that because of rent control?
Yeah. So I talked to Mike. He told me they asked him one question: do you support rent control? He had a very nuanced answer as to why he does not support rent control, and they didn't want to hear it. And basically, he told me that Duraka Larimore Hall asked him the question, and it never got beyond that question. They ran out of time and they moved on. And Mike sort of felt like, well, what about every other thing? Like, why can't you ask me about anything else? And so he did not get the endorsement.
Yeah,
Interesting.
I think that's a big mistake. I think
What not endorsing him's a big mistake?
not endorsing him is a big mistake. I mean, I think if Greg Hart was in town and not out in Sacramento, I think that would have played out differently. I mean, Mike Jordan is a very moderate, conservative Democrat compared to some of the other people, but he is very engaged and involved. And if you're a pragmatic, I mean, he's gonna win. And it's crazy to alienate like that. I think
Well, they didn't.
having rent control is a
They didn't
litmus.
endorse his opponent, did they?
No, they didn't have an opponent yet. But to have rent control as a litmus test for council members, I think is sort of a tactical approach. I don't necessarily
Yeah,
agree.
because it's also in District 1 where they didn't endorse Alejandro Gutierrez, the incumbent, either, because
I think if you want to get rent control, you're gonna have to get rent control on the ballot.
yeah.
And I don't think anyway.
Josh, isn't that the deal in District 1 too?
Yeah.
Oh, it is. They have a lot of other issues with council member Gutierrez, though. They endorsed her the first time. She did not even go for an interview the second time. She's been very vocal against rent control and against tenant protections, at least the to the degree that the activists want. And they feel as though she's been absent for part of her term. So it is rent control. And but it's other things too. And Winnie Santa Maria is very clear. I am pro rent control and I'm pro the strongest tenant protections possible.
And she got the Democratic endorsement.
She got it. I mean, she
Yeah.
is their candidate and she's kind of on fire in terms of the momentum of her campaign right now. So,
And they forced out Joan Jett. No, what's the I'm sorry.
Jet Black
I'm
Merits.
old. Okay, I'm old.
Yes. Jet Black Merits put out, I don't know if we talked about this, but
No,
like
we
the
haven't talked
harshest
about it.
email basically saying, I am stepping out. The powers that be don't want me to run or don't think I'm the most qualified. And she said, but I can't endorse Wendy Santa Maria or Alejandro Gutierrez. Meanwhile, she's running for Santa Barbara City College. I'm not saying she's like, wrong, but it was very harsh. It was like unusual that you say those things.
By the powers she meant the Dem party,
She
right?
meant the Dem Party or
Right.
members of the Dem Party.
I
So
mean,
they
Wendy
told her-
Santa Maria is a very charismatic candidate, but she's only lived here, what, a couple of years, whereas
Didn't bother Megan.
Jet's been here a long time. She's totally schooled and steeped in, the wonky minutiae of government. But she's a honky and is running in the first district, which is the most Latino districts, I think, in terms of voter registration.
All right, well, it's going to be interesting, and let me just put in a plug here. Save the date, August 28th. Is it? Josh and I are going to moderate debates for the first and the third district candidates in partnership with our friends at TV Santa Barbara at their space downtown. I guess it's a CEC space, but anyway, so
That's really good.
yeah, and then we'll find out what's going on with Jordan and see if we
I kind of think the Democratic Party might be cutting off their nose to spite their face. I mean, they just lost it with Doss Williams, and if you're going to
they keep learning the wrong lesson.
I think they're going to be off in a corner talking to themselves more than they already are.
Yeah. All
I mean,
right.
if a guy, Mike Jordan bugs me. He's weird. He says weird things.
Yeah.
He's got an odd sense of humor, all that stuff. But if you're going to have council members and Mike Jordan wants to be on the council, he's exactly the kind of guy who should be representing
how
the
many
Mesa.
years
He
did
loves
he
this
spend
stuff.
on planning and the water? I mean, he knows all this stuff.
And he's a Democrat.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
And he became a registered Democrat at the instigation of Greg Hart.
Well,
And
he's not,
basically,
as Darcell likes to say, I'm sure he's not a real Democrat like Roy Lee. Darcell will decide who's a real Democrat and who isn't. So thank you very much. All right. Hey, listen, speaking of Roy Lee, Nick, the pipeline issue, which, how long has that been? Was that 2014 was the
I believe it
spill?
was 2014.
So we're still,
Hey, 10-year anniversary.
The oil company formerly known as Exxon is still struggling with both the state and the county to try to get something turned back on there, but they're sort of checkmated between the two. Where does that stand? You had a good piece.
Okay, big picture, that the big pipeline spill of 2014 or whatever year it was, basically shut down all oil production off the coast of Santa Barbara because the whole processing plant in Gaviota has no pipeline that is functioning. And so Exxon, which has no love for Santa Barbara County anyway, said, the hell with you guys, the hell with it. And they sold all of their operations and the pipeline, which they had just purchased, to this imaginary new company called Sable, whose stock is being sold on the stock.
Sable, S-A-B-L-E?
S-A-B-L-E. And they loaned Sable millions or billions of dollars in order to buy, this interest in their infrastructure. But it has a limited time on it. And if Sable doesn't perfect permits by such and such a date, and they're coming right up, Exxon has the option of terminating the deal. So they have a light, a fire under their behinds to get moving. What I'm hearing from the environmentalists and from the people at County Energy Division is that they can't get out of their own way. They have submitted a couple of applications to the state fire marshal. It's called their risk analysis and what their programs are to fix things. And the state fire marshal a couple of weeks ago said, you can't get there from here. Not good enough. Sorry. You can go back to square one, but you're not ready.
So they sent them back to the county?
And well, the county has other issues to deal with. The state fire marshal is the one. Used to be the federal government was the one to say is the pipeline safe. They punted that back to the state fire marshal. They said, we're not going to do that. We're going to let the state fire marshal take care of it. So the county doesn't have any say over a lot of that. They have some say over some of it. So in the meantime, this is highly technical. The Sable has to get the county supervisors buy-in for what they call a transfer of ownership from Exxon to Sable. And one of the concerns everybody has is, does Sable have enough money that if things go kablooey, they can clean up the mess? And that, or at least that's the stated concern. Or they just sort of a fly-by-night operation that's going to take the money and run and leave the mess. I'm not sure what the details are, but what I've been told, the application Sable submitted for this transfer of ownership has also been rejected. It's not complete enough. So it isn't like we're saying go to hell. We're just saying you ain't there yet and your application sucks.
So bottom line, there's no oil being pumped from offshore.
Right.
This multiplicity of oil companies would like to restart it, but they're getting the thumbs down from the state and the county. But here's my question. The last vote on some aspect of this before the supervisors were 2-2.
Okay, I mean,
with Joan Hartman accusing herself. When Roy comes on and replaces Das, who voted against the oil company, what happens?
That is the million-dollar question. Roy Lee, that would be a very interesting one. So the vote you're talking about, the 2-2 vote, was whether or not Exxon would be given the permits needed to put in what they call automatic shutoff valves. That would, if there was a spill, if there was a problem with the pipeline, it would shut the pipeline down and it would minimize the damage. It's interesting that the reason the spill happened in the first place is that this company that had the pipeline at the time did not have automatic shutoff valves.
Otherwise, as you broke that story, as I recall.
I guess I did.
And you were nominated for the Pulitzer Prize.
Yes.
Anyway, all right.
So wait, just to get even
weirder, quick, wrap it up.
Josh Williams, who was then at the state assembly, introduced legislation and got it passed in Sacramento saying, thou shalt have automatic shutoff valves on pipelines. So then Exxon said, okay, we're going to comply with your law. And it was a 2-2 vote from the supervisors. Josh Williams voted against it. So did Laura Capps. And, so Exxon was doing what the county said it wanted to do, but things have changed in 10 years. And so right now, Roy Lee, if he comes in, he should break that tie one way or the other.
Right.
People say that who have talked to him, and that's not me, that he won't go that way. You have to understand, Roy Lee,
I kind of doubt it. I mean, Roy's been very protectionist in CARP on the cow.
Roy Lee comes from CARP, and he's of by for CARP. And in CARP, they do not like oil companies, and the politics of CARP would be very hostile to that. And I think he'd have a hard time living with his neighbors if he did that.
All right, a brief digression on this. The pipeline spill was the last time that, to my knowledge, Kamala Harris, who is now the Democratic soon-to-be nominee for president, was in Santa Barbara County. She came with a she was the attorney general, state attorney general at the time, and she came equipped with a camera crew to record her bending down to look at the water and all this other crap that she used then in her campaign for the U.S. Senate. So,
Well, Jerry, just to highlight your lack of romance in your soul, to get back to the first point, she was here when she got married. They got married
that's
here.
true. That's true. But that was before that. I was just saying.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, yeah, I have a great picture of me and her together on that occasion. But I don't know what that'll probably go for 25 cents on eBay. All right, we gotta get out of here. Josh, you have what? You have a rant up on the podcast right now, huh? Or what? But you had those bicycle individuals on as well.
I do have a rant on the chamber and Mike Jordan's snub. But yeah, I do have Strongtown Santa Barbara, who I recently interviewed, and as Nick said, they are interesting. I think that I'm not who they thought, and I think that they're not who I thought, and I think they're pretty reasonable, and they don't want to ban cars everywhere, but they're talking about State Street. But I encourage everyone to watch it because they're good people, and they have a perspective.
Jesus.
And
Corrupted him, Nick. You've corrupted him. He's become
here's the thing.
He's become a two-wheel shill.
These
No.
guys are passionate, smart, wonks, and they are young.
And they're 12 years old, and they're not going to be here next week. I mean,
Yeah.
come on.
Sullivan Israel is going to run for mayor, or Israel's, yeah.
All right, we got to get out. And then Nick, I really enjoyed the cover story this week on the Olympics on the
Oh, good.
on the family from Goleta that's put all the Olympians into women's water polo. 3 daughters. This is the 3rd one that's going to be playing. The only thing Jim Buckley, not that Jim Buckley, the good Jim Buckley, said that they had chlorine in their veins, which I thought maybe some sharp-witted editor might have
that sounds like a future independent cover story.
chlorine in their veins. Okay, thank you, Dr. Mengele. All right, we gotta get out. Josh Molina, Nick Welsh, thank you very much. Thank you all for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.
All right, we'll see you.